What's good, kings and queens? I'm Dame. Welcome to the Melanin Monday Movement. So today we're going to talk about mental health in the Black community. I'm going to start off by referencing this website, mhanational.org. I'll put a link in the description, but it breaks it down into three major categories that I think are the most important. It is prevalence, attitudes, and treatment issues. So it breaks it down into bullet points about a lot of the topics that I'll be discussing today. And the first one is Black African Americans are 20% more likely to report serious psychological distress than adult whites. Because in our neighborhoods we have a lot more or a lot different issues than some white communities. There's a lot of times that we report having depression, anxiety, or other mental health disorders because of the stuff we have to experience in our neighborhoods and in our communities. It's just because we aren't given certain privileges or we don't have maybe access to treatment is one of the reasons why psychological disorders are more prevalent. African Americans living in poverty are 3 times more likely to report serious psychological distress than people living above poverty. I mean, naturally, if you're poor, if you're living paycheck to paycheck or worse, you have issues with paying bills, so you have to sacrifice maybe your cell phone bill to make sure that your lights get on or are turned on. Those are some of the issues we live with. And when you have enough money to afford these things, you don't have to be stressed and depressed about paying bills or making sure your kids have somewhere to live or food to eat because you have the means to do so. But when you're in poverty, you don't have the opportunity. You got to get it how you live and hope that everything works out in your favor. And then adult African American males are more likely to have feelings of sadness, hopelessness, and worthlessness than adult whites. I mean, back to the poverty issue. There's a lot of things we deal with in our communities that other communities don't necessarily have to deal with. The suburbs have way less sadness, I would assume, in the fact of paying bills and stuff like that wouldn't stress them out. Yeah, there's other factors that would cause them to be sad, depressed, or otherwise. But for the most part, having the means to take care of yourself financially makes all the difference. It's not going to solve anything. Money doesn't solve all the problems, but it helps a lot, especially when you come up living in poverty like I have and a bunch of other people have, of our skin tone or whatnot. And even white people that go through, that live in poverty have similar issues. But it's just way more prevalent in the Black communities. And it says, while Black African Americans are less likely than whites to die from suicide as teenagers, Black or African American teenagers are more likely to attempt suicide than are white teenagers. So suicide is a huge issue, just in the world. But like it's saying that there'll be a lot more attempts from the Black communities because we have to deal with a lot more. We have to worry about, making sure we can eat. And even as kids, sometimes we have to take on adult responsibilities and help provide for our family when we shouldn't. We're teenagers. And my personal first suicide attempt, I was 13 years old. I'm 26 now, and I've had 8 suicide attempts. So it's very prevalent, and especially since a lot of times, and we'll get to this later, that we don't talk about mental health enough in the Black community. So we don't get the treatment we need. We don't, confide in each other like we need to. We don't support each other like we need to in certain aspects because we try to avoid speaking about certain things that make us weak or make us sound crazy or whatever because our community's standards are a little bit different and skewed in that way. And then so moving on to attitudes. So this is a study done by Ward, Wiltshire, Dietrich, and Brown in 2013. And you'll see this on the website link that I'll put below again. And Black and African Americans hold beliefs related to stigmas, psychological openness, help seeking, which turns into effects of coping with their behaviors. So basically, we have stigmas in our communities that make it difficult for us to talk about psychological disorders and or coping with them, even if we do speak about them, because sometimes we just got to be strong. We just got to stay strong regardless of the situation, and we don't have time to act depressed because we're too busy making sure that there's food on the table for our kids and our families. And that's a hard issue that we suffer with. On top of that, 30% of participants in the study reported having a mental illness or receiving treatment for a mental illness. So I guarantee that more than 30% of the people in the study should probably seek some type of help for mental illness. I'm not saying they're all crazy or whatever, but depression is a common mental illness, and sometimes you just need to talk about your issues with an unbiased professional to help you work through some things. And I've been going to counseling myself for the greater part of 7 years, I believe, and 7, 8 years, and it helps. But a lot of the time, we aren't getting the treatment we need, so we're not addressing these problems. We're just pushing them to the side instead of dealing with them, and that's why the mental health is just getting worse, because we taught and we teach each other not to talk about things and suck it up, and or you're being weak or crazy or whatever, and we need to get past that and actually focus on healing ourselves so we can heal our communities. So exposure to mental illness and increased knowledge of mental illness are factors that could potentially change beliefs about symptoms of mental illness. So I've been diagnosed with multiple severe mental health disorders personally, and I thought I was crazy. I didn't understand what was going on with me personally, so I thought I was just crazy, and taking these pills and everything else. Other people thought I was crazy too, and going to counseling, once a week, twice a month, whatever it ends up being, looks like weakness. But when you're exposed to mental health more often, and you see that there are people like you in similar situations, it allows you to open up and seek the help that you need, so you can deal with these issues and you don't pass the bad mentality of hiding your mental health issues to your kids or to future generations. You want to take care of these. It's just like having diabetes. You take insulin to treat or to help balance your levels in your body. The same thing you have to do with mental illness. You have to seek treatment. Maybe you need to take pills to balance out some instabilities in your mind or whatever, but it works the same way. You have to treat the issue. It's not going to get better. And so if you know more about it, you stop thinking that people are crazy and start realizing that people are dealing with things that they don't know how to cope with necessarily. And we need the help from outside sources like counseling and medication to be able to balance ourselves and be functioning members of society. And then a lot of people are apprehensive about getting help because of stigmas. Because people say you're being weak, you're being a bitch, whatever, get over it. She just left you, it's no big deal, whatever. But they don't realize how that affects you. And if you have a mental health condition, it may affect you in a worse way than they could even, comprehend. So if you're not getting the treatment you need, it's just going to perpetuate the same issues into future generations. And that's not good for anybody, especially our communities, because we're already suffering enough as it is. So we have to heal ourselves from within so we can put this positive energy into the world and help our communities grow. And then the final point that they make that I want to bring up on this website is treatment issues. So it says, Black African Americans today are overrepresented in our jails and prisons, which is very true. People of color account for 60% of prison population. Black and African Americans also account for 37% of drug arrests, but only 14% of regular drug users. And a lot of the times we're using these illicit drugs, like some people smoke weed just to calm down and just to get over a lot of these mental health issues, because if you don't, it's overwhelming. So we smoke weed, we do other drugs maybe as a way to self-medicate and treat our own issues, because seeking treatment is thought of as wrong, but smoking a blunt is okay. So we use these drugs and we get locked up behind it. It's not always the case. Some people are, doing way worse, drug trafficking and everything else, maybe violent crimes, but at the same time, over twice the amount of drug users we have in our community are getting locked up for drug arrests. And it could be something as simple as just smoking a blunt to kind of relax your body and be able to move forward in life without having to deal with a lot of these issues. So a lot of the drugs we use to cope with our mental health issues could be resolved by actually seeking treatment, and then that would lower our incarceration rate and we'll be able to feed the community more, because we'll have more people behind us to support us, to drive us, to fuel our economy. And the very last point is the stigma and judgment, which I've talked about a few times in this video already. The stigma and judgment that prevent blacks and African Americans from seeking treatment in their mental illnesses. Research indicates that black African Americans believe that mild depression or anxiety would be considered crazy in their social circles. And I've experienced this a lot. Like, you know, if I get depressed or if I lash out or in any way, they think I'm being crazy or whatever. But I'm just so overwhelmed in my mind that I can't escape it. I have these intrusive thoughts that just come, and I can't fight them off. So I resort to doing things that are considered crazy. And part of the reason I'm doing those things is because I'm not getting the right treatment and medication that I need to kind of prevent a lot of these intrusive thoughts from happening. You have to take some initiative to get that treatment, as well as building a foundation for support for your children. Like, my son is very open about his emotions. If he's sad, he's, "Daddy, I'm sad for this, and this reason." We'll talk about it. He'll express his feelings. He may cry, and we'll work through it, and then he'll, good to go. But if you're not opening up, if you're not allowing your children, your friends and family to open up to you, or discouraging them from seeking treatment because they're quote unquote crazy, then you're holding them back from developing, healthy coping mechanisms, which in turn will create a domino effect, and then they're going to start lashing out, and then you're going to really think they're crazy when they do things that are out of character or worse. You know what I'm saying? So what we need to do is normalize this mental health issues in our community. We need to talk about it. We need to get treatment. We need to change our attitudes about it. And then, even if it's still prevalent, at least we're getting the treatment and we can grow and move on. But if you're not taking steps forward, you're taking steps backward. So what you need to do is address the problem and treat it, so that way it doesn't expand even further and deeper in our communities, and we can help each other build each other up in the kings and queens we need to. And even though we may have mental health issues, we can still grow and be a strong community, because we're seeking the treatment and we accept that it is a thing. Yes, depression is a thing. Yes, anxiety, bipolar, borderline are all serious mental health issues that our community faces every day. And if we don't talk about it, we can't fix it, and then we can't fix our communities in turn. So if we come together, treat each other well, allow a circle of people who can be there to support you, and so you can grow and flourish and treat your mental health issues, and then we can build the community that we're looking to have, the strong, tight-knit community of people with the same mindset who just want to be better and do better for the future generations to come. And once we lay that groundwork, we'll be good. But if we're not addressing the problem, we're making it worse. So if nobody told you today, I love you. Links to the unapologetically black clothing from MelaninIsLife.com will be in the description. Links to the pages that I use for this video, the website that I use for this video will be in the description. And, have a good day.